Welcome to LYLAS. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably know what that stands for. And by default, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good morning, LYLAS friends.
That's right. All friends. All friends are part of our program here.
Today's topic, your husband's super jazzed about it. And I'm curious why. Because true to form, what I texted you last night, and I said, this should be the topic for tomorrow. And then you said, Jeff is pumped. He's all in.
Loves it.
Hear why.
Loves it. I think that what we are doing is trying to be more aware of we'll call it the God winks, or I refer to it as like the universe, and how at different points of time, if you, I guess, are just maybe open or willing to kind of see these things, they happen all of the time. And I think the way that we collectively kind of associate it is that is a cue to us that we are moving on the right track. Like if we continue to have like these random, like absolute, like if we told you some of the shit that happens, people would be like, you guys have drank the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like, okay. But I think it's just being aligned with working on yourself, which we both do kind of in our own way. He's a part of this very intensive, reflective leadership kind of program that's not focused just on like the business aspects of leadership, but you as a leader. And in order to be an effective leader, you got to get your shit right, which is kind of the same stuff that we're doing.
Personal growth.
Much personal growth, much personal growth. Yeah, it's really cool. Cool. And then with that, I think, we just are, again, both collectively are duly working on our own kind of thing and going about it our own way. But we see so much crossover that's happened between the two. And it's neat to see that. But even with just other random things, like if you're just open to the world and not so focused on what's going on in your head or what's going on your streams on your phone, and just look out, then I think that we're able to be much more receptive to true validation or signs that we are being loved, cared for, on the right path, however you interpret what our topic is today.
Yeah, whatever you interpret the sign to be, or the God wink. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I went and got my journal and everything. You basically just said no, but you did hit a lot of the same points. And I think today's topic, if you haven't picked up on it, is what we're going to title God winks, which are like those instances or situations or whatever you want to call it, moments in your life where something happens and you just know that it's a sign from whatever you want to call it. God, the universe, your angels that are looking over you, your angel, what do they call it? Angel guides. Some people have heard to, whatever it is, there's these moments that are just undeniable. And if you've ever experienced one before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you can't help but notice. You're like, this is someone sending some sort of signal to me. And so when I think of God winks, first of all, I want to say it's awesome that you and Jeff can talk about this stuff. My Jeff is less spiritual, less on the spiritual side, much more pragmatic, very like everything has an explanation. He doesn't get into the woo stuff quite like I do, or the spirituality just in general. And so I love that you guys can actually talk about these things. If I say these things to my Jeff, he kind of looks at me like, okay, Jenny.
This is a new development, by the way.
But that's okay because I don't need his validation for my God winks. Like he's not part of my relationship with God and the universe. So that's okay, that he doesn't understand or necessarily see the same things that I see, but they're so present. And now I just tell him like what happened and I don't say what it means to me. But they happen all the time. Like I had one on Friday that I can't wait to tell you about. Because when they happen, they're so exhilarating in some way, right? I don't know. Or if it, yeah, I think in most cases, it kind of reminds you of someone that maybe has passed, or it gives you a very clear kind of cue that you're on the right path, sort of what you were talking about, like it's a nudge, or I like to think of life as like a yellow brick road, and it's these little winks kind of nudge you to stay on the path if you're headed in the right direction.
Yes. 100% yes. That's about where I was just going to stop right there. I think that I can't wait to hear what you have to say, but I firmly believe that there are these things that happen. And again, they can sound really like supernatural or again,
coincidental.
Right, whatever.
Yeah.
We could try to explain things away all we want to, but I think that by doing so, we maybe unintentionally take away the magic from the world and and the color and the brightness that's actually there and a part of it. And I'm just not willing to live in a world that isn't colorful and bright. And I fully embrace whenever I get the nudge or the sign.
The wink.
Yeah, the wink. And then sometimes I'm like, okay. Yeah. It's not always like it fills you up with like great joy. Sometimes it's almost like a corrective process. You know what I mean?
Course
Again,
correct.
If you're open to all things,
for sure.
You also know that it's you're on the right path, or it's like, bitch, you just went off trail. Like
I've had a few of those too myself.
Yeah, like let's get things back aligned. Aligned is another word for
it. So let's give some specific examples because we're talking in like these very broad and general terms. And then we'll kind of come back to like, the whole idea of this nudging you along your path. Because I think ultimately that's what they are, right? They're winks. They're nudging you. They're maybe giving you that bump of like, hope that you need that day if you're really low or you're really struggling in grief. It can be like these really gentle nudges that sort of bring you back to life. And so I'm curious how God winks come to you. Is it specific? Does it happen in all different situations?
Yeah, mine's all different.
What are your main communications or winks from the universe?
Geez. I think that the most I can break it down into two categories probably. One of them is whenever it's like a course correction, as you kind of said, that whenever I've set an intention or a goal and then my mind starts to get in the way and make an excuse for not finishing it, generally speaking, something will happen to make me, in a sense, complete that intention or goal. Okay. So, and I don't like using the word make me as if it's like, if you don't do that, you know what I mean? Like it's an authoritative type of thing, but it is at that moment the strongest reminder that I'm going off track, or I've went off track, and this is the path to kind of get back.
This is the way back.
Yeah, this is the way back. Okay. The other ways that I think it comes, honestly, I think it comes in the other form too for me. It's much more about like validation or sending uplifting messages in a sense. And so, or, as you would say, like coincidental things. But if it's two people that that are on completely like parallel tracks to have these lining points that continue to meet up, that's just a different thing. I think that you can go parallel through life with your partner, with your friend, or whatever, and that's fine and that works. But whenever you have these like, I don't know, horizontal, I'm not good at math. This is geometry I'm talking now. These like horizontal points where things just continue to line up. It's like, well, okay, then we're not just moving in the same direction with each other. we have these different points that are also connecting us along the way. And so just kind of keep going. You know, it's kind of like a double helix of a DNA strand that has the.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You've lost me. But I think what you're saying is human connection. Maybe it comes out in the form of human connection. I was thinking very, I don't know, literal is the right word, but I would say my winks come differently in the form of like a song or animal or a lot of times like the number 5 I've mentioned before is a big thing for me. I get a lot of messages with like the number 5 attached or human connection is definitely another one. Like you'll have that moment with somebody and that interchange and like they've had some signs too. And then like before you know it, you're like, wow, this was like some sort of other force, otherworldly force, like making this connection for us. So that's sort of how my signs come about. But I want to tell you about the sign that came on Friday, the wink, whatever. I don't. Well, I like wink just because it's cheeky and cute. But Friday was the combination of 3 months of work. I have been working on one specific project at my new job. That's been like my undertaking. Okay, it's been like the one thing that I've had to do sort of on my own. And it's a lot of work and it's new task for me and it's been hard and it's been a lot of learning and a lot of mistakes and all the things. Anyway, a lot of growing. Okay.
The growth.
And I was on the site of about to push it live, like the final run through check just to make sure everything was cool. And all of a sudden, this hawk swoops in. If you know my desk here, it faces the window. And I just overlook like a pond and a bunch of trees. And this hawk literally like swoops down in front of my window and lands on a branch, maybe like, I'm not good with math either, but we're going to call it 10 yards away.
Okay.
So I can see this hawk beautifully right out the window, directly in front of me, sitting in this pine tree. And it's just sitting there, like almost like it's staring at me, like in this interesting way, right? I'm like, this is so weird. Because if you remember from a previous episode, I talked about Tyler Henry, and he said that during my reading that my dad watches over us like a hawk, particularly my children. He watches over them like a hawk. And I was like, that's so fitting just to think of my dad as a hawk, like kind of like could totally see that. And like, you know, I could tell you another God wink. We came home from school a couple of weeks ago, riding our bikes, and the kids, I pull in behind them. I was taking my time, and they're like, there's a hawk here. Anyway,
thing with
hawks, dad reference. And so anyway, hawk is sitting out the window. It's staring at me. I'm staring at it. This blue jay is like dive bombing this hawk, like attacking it. And the hawk is literally just standing there staring at me. Like, yelling down to my husband, I'm like, baby, I come see this. There's a hawk out the window, blah, 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 blah. And completely forgotten about my website at this point. And so anyway, he goes back downstairs. I'm continuing to watch this hawk. And across the pond, I see these like wings coming at me, right? I just see like these wings flying across. And it's 2 more hawks. And these other 2 hawks come and they have this like party on the branch with the 3rd hawk that's been sitting here looking at me. They like do this like flapping motion and then they take off flying and literally like they are coming at me. Like they literally came at the window and then like swooped up and took off like out, you know, through our neighborhood. It was the craziest thing. I was just like, I was yelling. I mean, it was wild. It was totally wild.
Oh my gosh.
When stuff like this happens, you could be like, yeah, Jenny, like you saw a hawk, you stare out the window all day. That's no shock. However, when like these things happen, this was such a like, that was a big feeling moment. Like, I don't know, like anytime you do something big with your work and you want, you know, you want it to reflect good quality that you know, you can complete the task or whatever. But like, you know, I'm sitting here stupid as it sounds like I'm ready to push it live and my heart's like racing. I'm like, I can do this, you know? And then like this whole like hawk scenario plays out in front of me. And I'm like, these are God winks. Like you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing. Your dad's really proud of you. Like as weird as that sounds, but like there's this whole idea of like, you're doing it. You are figuring it out and it's all going to be okay. It's like that nudge back to the yellow brick road, right? I just feel like life is one giant scavenger hunt. And we have to keep like collecting these clues along the way, whether it's like a hawk flying at you or whatever it is. It's sort of the clues that keep us on the yellow brick road. And that was a big one for me. And I was like, okay, like we're doing this. This is good, you know? I don't know.
I would have lost my shit had that happened. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like I've had some really crazy things like that happen in life where I'm like, it's just you can't make this shit up. Yeah. The first time I went on my dad's farm after he died, I was sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair with his widow. And out of nowhere, it's a beautiful sunshiny day on the top of this mountain. Out of nowhere, this huge wind comes and makes like a tornado of leaves that dances around the front yard and then just like dances off the farm. Like it came out of nowhere. You know, when stuff like that happens, it is really hard for me to deny that that's just coincidence.
Oh,
that just happened. And even if it did, even if I'm wrong and it is coincidence, I don't feel like I really have anything to lose by gaining a good feeling from something like that.
Correct. And that I think that that is the point. What do you have to lose by recognizing that you feel good in the moment because something you were observant?
Right. Because you stopped and you paid attention to what was happening around you. I mean, that's when we get, if you're a spiritual person, like that's when you tap into faith, is in those moments when you get really quiet and you just pay attention.
Oh, 100%. And then, you know, even I think allowing serendipitous, like noticing the serendipity, I guess, in life, or how spontaneity may not always be spontaneity. It might be a push towards doing something that's going to put you on the path.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And I totally agree. We had 3 things, oddly, I think there might have been even more, but I can name 3 things off the top of my head that happened with us this weekend. One of the 3, both of us, he's been meditating with me. Yay! I love this. And that's one. So as part of his leadership kind of training, they call it a recalibration. And he talked me through like how they're doing. I was like, well, that's the same thing as meditation. And he was like, okay. They do it a little bit shorter in their time frame or whatnot, but from the benefits that he got from that, he was, you know, he was like, well, how do you do it? And so then we started kind of meditating at different points of time together. And so again, what the path that we're on refers to something in one way. His refers to it in another word. Same thing.
Which doesn't matter. You're getting the same benefit because you're doing ultimately the same thing.
You're closing your eyes and you're breathing. You know what I mean? Right. You're doing the work. And the other thing is that on Sunday, we were out of town. On Sunday morning, he opened up the Gideon Bible that was in the drawer. And so before our meditation, we did, because he goes to a church that he went to whenever he was a kid. He's really loves this place. It fills his cup. It's a really good thing. It's really cute. They're the best people on the planet. But he opened up the Bible and it was some chapter, I think, in Job. Random. Like he randomly opened up this Bible, read through a few verses of it. We kind of sat there, talked about it for a few minutes, then went on our meditation, then went on with our day. He goes to church at 7:00. And I don't typically go with him. I'll go with him on like big holidays or whatever. And he came home and he went, you're never going to believe what
the God wink that just happened.
What the pastor taught about tonight in church. And I was like, what was it? Yeah, because I'm always interested in the nuggets that he comes back with. And he was like, it was Job, and it was like the same exact chapter. It was 2 verses that I randomly read out of something today. And I was like,
such a God wink, right? And you can't ignore things like that. Like, what are the odds? There are a trillion, I don't know how many verses, but there's a lot. Okay. There's a lot to choose from. The fact that the same one occurred when he went to church is wild.
I mean, he just literally, like, I watched him. Like, he literally got the Gideon book out of the mind. I mean, sat in a chair, opened it straight up, and then just started reading. Whatever told
Look,
him, nudged him to start to
I'm
read.
sure I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that any like pastors or priests or anybody that is a religious leader, I bet they get a lot of God winks. Like, I bet a lot of things like that happen to them. Because you're taking guidance from some other power, right? And I'm sure that they are getting the same, even heightened type of guidance to deliver whatever message they've been given. But so crazy. Similarly, when I was driving home on Sunday, I had a bunch of podcasts queued up. Like I was going to plow through them. And I just randomly like kind of went bloop and picked one. And not one that I was necessarily going to pick off the top, like to listen to first. But the first thing she said was, "Oh, my phone just buzzed at 5:55." And I was like, I should probably listen to this all the way through because five's my number. Like, there's probably some message in this. And literally, this podcast could have been scripted for me. Like, this specific episode that I then listened to, I was just like, holy shit. So, like, and it was like things I needed to hear and reflect on. And I was like, there's constant nudging if you're paying attention. Like you have to be open and you have to be paying attention and you have to know yourself well enough to know like what shows up frequently for you. Like the number of 5 for me has shown up in my life repeatedly forever, as long as I can remember. So like I know generally if that number is attached to something, it probably has a message for me. Or there's something that I'm going to. Um, but it's just crazy. Like when stuff like that happens, you're like, holy crap. This is exactly what I've been thinking about or meditating about. And, and is it self-fulfilled prophecy? I don't know. However, I do believe that these are like winks for us.
Right. And so what if it is, if it's putting you on a path of like betterment, does it even matter?
Correct.
Yeah, no, he even stayed after church, I think, and told the pastor. He was like, "Hey, you're not going to believe this." And he was like, "God's always watching." And then just kind of moved on about his day. Like real plain and nonchalant like that. And I just think
unattached.
Yeah.
Talking about attachment before we recorded this. That's why I had to point that out. However, what are some other God winks that you can think of? Have there ever been any really big ones? I have another really big one that I can think of.
No, go ahead.
I took the kids, or we took the kids, my in-laws and everybody. We went horseback riding this past summer, and it was the first time my daughter had been on a horse. And my mother-in-law was paying and doing all that stuff. And we were at this corral. We were out in Colorado. And I went to run to put my purse back in the car. And when I turned around, similarly to what happened that day on Dad's farm, this giant, like, I don't know what they're called, like cyclones, like dust cyclones, came and went through that entire like horse corral. And all the horses were going crazy and like rearing up. I mean, it was wild. And I just stood there and like had the biggest shit eating grin on my face because I was just like, it was so obvious to me. I'm like, this is the first time my daughter's riding a horse. Like that was, our thing. And like, I was like, of course, there's a giant funnel cloud that just rolled right through here as we're about to saddle up. Like, just stuff like that. A lot of them I feel like are messages from people that have passed. And that's, I think what brings us so much comfort, so much hope, so much just joy in knowing that they are still present on some level. I talk about that a lot in that those are what keep you going when you're in deep grief. Those moments, those little winks that you get where you're like, oh, they're still here. Oh, they're still with me. And so sometimes it can be like life course corrections, like we've talked about. And then I feel like sometimes it's just like a message of like, I'm here,
Yeah.
I'm not missing this, even though you think I am.
Yeah. No. And again, it just takes what are you receptive to receiving? Or what are you maybe intentionally or unintentionally blocking yourself from receiving? Mm-hmm. And I think that, so many factors can kind of come into play with that, where we allow ego or whatever else to kind of get in the way with it. But I think this kind of goes back to whenever we were talking about our energy episode, like 2 weeks ago or so, and even to meditation. I think, as humans, we have de-evolved from our natural intuition that was given to us to help us through the world. And through the evolutionary process, we've allowed our mind to kind of take over. And I don't know that that's been so helpful, because our thoughts are more often than not toxic, blocking, whatever else. And by doing so, by focusing so much on what we think, we're not able then to pick up on things that our intuition, which was given to us to help us to survive, we just start to suppress that even more. And the more that I think that we allow ourselves to turn into that kind of place, the more open and receptive we can get, because then our sensor is not so much our brain that is just all the time scanning the environment based upon our thoughts. So it's getting in skewed data to begin with. But whenever we allow our sensor that's scanning the environment, so to speak, to be our gut or our intuition, we're able then to just kind of take in even more information that's not skewed, that's not biased in any sort of way, shape, or form. And I think that that's the real maybe goal of knowing and understanding, is to just kind of, again, turn into that like space. So
yeah, just stay super present. It's really easy to miss things like that if you're not present in the moment. And I used to hate hearing people say that. Actually, it used to really annoy me when people be like, let's be present in this moment, or, just or like, put your phone down, let's be present. But you can put your phone down and not be present. I can be thinking about what's going on my phone, or the text chain that I'm in, or, like, being present takes work in truly disassociating from thoughts and whatever else is happening, to really be where you are. And all of those, like, kind of not cheesy, but like redundant sayings, be here, be where you are, be present, all of those things that, if you're actually practicing the act of being present, you are much more, I think, open and aware to God winks.
Yep.
But if you're just sort of distracted, it is really hard to see it.
Yeah, and distracted can be from anything, from an emotion. Like when we talked about emotion, giving away your emotional power. It can be, and again,
a feeling. If your body has if you're aching, or your stomach's upset, like, that's a distraction. It's hard. I mean, you're being present. If most of the time, if you're feeling pain, you're probably also present in that moment, but it's still distracting you from being able to see what else is potentially unfolding in front of you.
Definitely.
Like, I could have easily missed that whole hawk scenario had I been like nose deep,
Right.
I don't know.
It is true. And there's this sometimes they call it like the burnt toast theory.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
No, it's the same exact. It's probably just somebody came up with this clever term for it. But it's like in the moment, maybe we're fixing breakfast and we burn the toast, and it takes us a few extra minutes or seconds to move on with our day. But those extra few minutes or seconds were what kept us out of getting in a car accident. What kept something else bad from happening that we don't even know could have, or that, some people get this sense, and even while driving, like, you have two different ways to get there. But because you're present and within that moment, one way, excuse me, feels safer than the other. Like, I think I want to go this way instead. And you can't explain why you want to do it, but you just have this strong urge to go this way instead. And you go on about your day, you get to your destination, and you never think more about it. And maybe nothing bad happened on that other path. Maybe every car that was on it was fine. However, I don't think that you know what you saved yourself from by listening to those nudges, gut, intuition, God winks, by just following through that. I think that people dismiss this stuff because they don't have that obvious negative consequence. Like, well, you know, I went Route 60 instead of taking 64, just as an example for things here. And there was a huge wreck on 64. Then I could sit there and say, oh, we see that's proof that I should have done it this way.
Right.
And what somebody that might be like a naysayer would say, you know, oh, wrecks happen all the time, things like that, or whatever. Or I could go 60 and there nothing happened. And I'd be like, you see, we had an easy trip. And then somebody could say, well, nothing happened on 64. We could have taken that way too.
Right.
We don't know.
We don't know. You can't predict the future, but you have intuition, a guide telling you,
yeah,
don't go that way.
I could have been the catalyst of something that happened that way had I not listened to. So it doesn't even have to involve other people. But sometimes we might be the, and I'm going to use that word again, catalyst to something happening when we don't listen to our intuition.
Yeah. On that note, I do have another story to tell you. It was several years ago, and I had it was in the summer. I had dropped the kids off at daycare, and one of them was going swimming, I think Jack, and I had forgotten his bathing suit. So I had to run back home. I was very frazzled. I can't remember why. I think I had to be somewhere. Anyway, I ran home, was running back to the daycare, and I was pulling out of the neighborhood. We have a stoplight. And there was a brand new Mercedes in front of me, and like brand spanking new. I was looking at my phone, like full disclosure, was totally distracted, looking at my phone, being all like frazzled, and I rear-ended her. Because you come out of a stoplight and you go directly into another stoplight. And if you're not paying attention, you rear end people just like I did. And I was like sick because then I'm like not going to get as close to it. Like the whole, you just start spiraling. So anyway, the old lady gets out. She's this old Russian woman. And she's like, I'm actually on my way up to the Mercedes dealership. I just got this car. Why don't you follow me there? I'm like, are you sure we can call it? She's like, just follow me there. I'll let them decide. She goes, I don't see any damage. And I'm like, okay. Because I was doing like 5 miles an hour. So we go up there. They come out. They survey it. There's no damage to her car. And she's like, you just go ahead. Like, let's not worry about it. Let's pretend this never happened. To this. And like, it was a real sign for me. I was so upset with myself because I'm really big on putting your phone away when you're driving. And I did it and it, you know what I mean? And it like cost me on some level, like, it's still stressful. And then, it was just a sign to me, like, slow down, quit being in a rush to go everywhere. It's not worth it. Put your phone away, practice what you preach. And, that could have gone so differently. But to this day, and I have lived in this neighborhood for 14 years, I have never seen that woman. I had never seen that car before. She told me she lived in the neighborhood. Her husband, like we did the whole thing. We spent a lot of time together that morning. I've never seen her. I've never seen her husband, and I have never seen that car again. And I walk and ride through this neighborhood all the time. I'm like, I don't know where she came from. She had a really thick Russian accent, and I never saw her again.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But like, I looked at that whole experience like that was a God wink. Like, nudging me. You're rushing, you're distracted, slow down.
Yeah. No, I totally, again, I've been down this rabbit hole. I've made peace with this side of myself a long time ago. Just because I think that growing up, it was very easy for us to be, to pay attention to like your intuition or things like that. My dad was always kind of into like that Eastern medicine stuff. And so, or Eastern belief system. My one, was a Native American that would take me out in the woods all the time. So it was easier for me to kind of align, I think, to believing. And I call it the universe. There's kind of signs with it. But on my very first trip that I went to Europe by myself with, it was right after my grandmother died. And I think I've talked about her on here before. Like she was like two peas in a pod, you know, like there's no one else that is more like me or was more like me than her. And for the last 10 years of her life, she was a brilliant woman, but, you know, got that kind of vascular dementia and had to be moved into an assisted living place. But up until her death, my dad and I made sure for like 10 years that neither one of us would either be out of town whenever she was around, just in case we had to be there. Mm-hmm. And she loved going to Europe. She spent her 80th birthday in like the, I don't know, restaurant in the Eiffel Tower. So it was something that I always really admired about her, because she would go sometimes by herself or with a group of friends, but she was always like the single female that was doing it. And that first trip I went on, I had nothing planned except my flight in. I was doing a trail run in Greece, and it was on this remote island out in the middle of nowhere that I didn't have the boat planned to, right? Because I'm just like, well, we're just going to figure this out. And then I had my flight home. So I had no idea where I was going, where I was staying, anything like that. But all along the way, there were these people. And because I was going to Greece and that was like the thing, I just referred to it as like the gods. Mm-hmm. And in Greek mythology, they believe that at times the gods will come down from Olympus to guide you, or to kind of take you to places that you need to go, or to help you to kind of do things. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I had them all written down. I probably do on a post from like 10, 15 years ago or something, but that these random people that didn't even speak my language would just be present with me or would help me along the way. And I was like, I don't even know where I'm going, but how do you know where I need to go and how to get there? Right. And every time they would, like, even she was from Crete, woman sitting with me on that airplane was just like telling me all this stuff. And I didn't even ask for it, but it was like, okay, well, Athena is sitting right here beside me. And she had like these red eyes. It was crazy as shit. But the weirdest thing I think that happened on that thing is, again, I didn't have my plan to get to this island. And so I went to the ferry station or whatever, and they said all of them are booked, but come back in a few hours and we'll see what's kind of going on. There was some guy that didn't even work at the ferry station that was sitting outside of the thing on like a bike. And so I was feeling really upset. I was really disappointed in myself. You know what I mean? Like, I was getting ready to run this race. I was so pumped. To get over to this place. And so I went over to this little restaurant, and this guy came back on his bike, not even an employee from the ferry station, couldn't even speak a lick of English, but then basically, you know, asked me if I was done eating. And I was like, yeah, I was probably had a glass of wine or something too. But he basically just said, come with me. And I just, of course, I just randomly followed this person. And
safe.
This is what I do all the time. If you see, basically, I can get lured into a car right now if you tell me you have a Great Pyrenees puppy.
Oh, dear Jesus.
I know, it's so bad. But this guy just led me back. And the woman hadn't even, whenever I got in there, she said, I was just about ready to reach you because it just came open. So it hadn't even came open whenever he left to come get me. And he, again, maybe he could understand English, maybe he couldn't, but he rode, I don't know, a good bit on his bike to take me back there. And she said, it just came open. Like, how did you know to come back?
How about that?
And I was like, well, Hermes over here, you know what I mean? Just got on his little bike.
I think it's Hermes. No, I'm just joking. Right. You can't deny stuff like that. That's so crazy. When that happens, you're just like, oh, thank you. And my grandfather gave us $6 when we were leaving. Whenever we saw him, he'd give us, you know, money for a McDonald's Happy Meal. And like randomly, I'll put an old jacket on that I haven't worn in like a decade, and there'll be like a 5 and a 1 in there. Be like 6, you know, like little things like that. That all the time I'm just like, oh, there's a God wink. There's hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, those are precious moments. They really are. I think they are. But you have to be open and you have to get quiet and you have to pay attention. You know, I think that that's the biggest thing is when you're paying attention, it's really hard not to see them. Um, Especially when you need it. You know, I feel like they really come in the moments that you need them most. At least for me, they do consistently. So
definitely.
I hope other people, I mean, I know this is a conversation I've definitely had with other friends before, and they're always like, oh, I know what you mean, you know, so I know that other people experience this too. Um, but I would like to hear some God winks. If you've had a God wink, go to our website, go to our Facebook, and leave us a message, send us a message. I would love to hear any God winks, especially if you have repeated ones happen. Cardinals are big for me. I know that a lot of people believe that cardinals are loved ones visiting. Um, you know, I see cardinals all the time. There's just a lot of, you know, you can see it literally anywhere if you're looking for it.
Yeah, and it can, you can laugh about it, you can think that it's silly, but whatever. I truly believe that these things are gifts, our signs, our nudges, our whatever. I mean, I remember one time we came home from a trip to Rio and literally got in the car at the airport. And at this point, you know, it was on some random radio station because we play this silly game in the car where we flip it on a bunch of radio stations, and then whoever can name the song and the artist first, like, gets a point. Like, we do all kind of like silly stuff. And so it wasn't even on a station that we would listen to. Our phones weren't connected to it. And the first song that comes on is Rio by Duran Duran. Okay. You know, like,
crazy.
Yeah. But it just, I would say every day that there's something. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is something. And it's
a lot of time observing them.
I literally have nothing in my head unless I'm angry. Literally, I have, unless I'm looking at my list. Jeff asks me that all the time. We'll be driving someplace and he'll be like, "What are you thinking about?" And my answer is nothing. But that also has right. There's a bird. I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse because when something is there, it's very intense. But whenever there's nothing there, it's literally like I'm just kind of like here,
taking it all in.
Right.
I'm that way in the car too. I do like to take it all in. But anyway, God winks. I hope you have some God winks today.
Me too.
Be looking for some more so that we can post about them when it's time to publish this episode. But a little bit light, funner. I said that all backwards. Lighter, a more fun episode talking about those winks from God, the universe, whatever it is that you believe in. Look for those today in your life, and then go to our website and let us know about them because I want to hear. Anything else for this week on this topic?
Oh God, you said that. And now I just have one more.
Okay, say it.
All right. I know she's like, oh Jesus.
No, I can't wait to hear. Always.
I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I think it resonates more at different points of time. Amazing.
Like, who are you? You're crying?
I know, right?
Crying over God winks? No, I'm just kidding. Please continue.
Should. Being a type 1 diabetic or whatever. Again, I've said probably in these exact words. I've always looked at it as like being an odd gift that whatever, for whatever reason, you have it. Now go out there and, live life. So get the doctorate, get the black belt, get the 50K, do whatever it is. And again, Cameron was always there watching all of that. Seth, sorry. Seth was watching it too. But he was always at the finish line. He was always wherever I was. And he knew, he'd seen me sick, he had seen me whatever, the whole thing. And then whenever he was diagnosed, and that whole story about whenever he realized at that moment that he could, that I think was a big one.
A big wink for you.
Because I knew then that everything I had done was not, again, selfish. It wasn't me taking time away from him to go out and, do my thing. I mean, running a 50K takes a long time, training and everything else. But, or taking night classes, all the things that you can get criticized for as a parent, especially as a mother, for not doing with your child, I wasn't doing. I wasn't doing those things, but I didn't know at that point in time what I was doing.
Right. You knew the intention. You knew the intention and you knew the goal. And for, you had this desire to fulfill these things, but you didn't necessarily know why.
Yeah.
You didn't know what the true purpose behind all of it was. That's the beauty of time. It unfolds all of these things for us that we don't understand in the moment. But you have, it all sort of opens to you. And then you go, yes. There was a bigger purpose behind all of this.
The moment he was diagnosed, I knew. I was like, okay, everything makes sense.
Yeah.
And even like last weekend, I was running one. And he was there at the different aid stations. And then again, whenever I crossed the line.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's a big one.
That is a big one. I agree. That's a big wink. Keep going, keep doing, keep showing.
Bless his heart.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart.
Bless it.
I'm really stifling the desire to make a joke because that's how I am. And you're there in tears. And I'm not uncomfortable by your tears. I'm actually quite
intrigued, probably, right?
Well, yeah, a little. I'm like, you're emotional. I like it. You don't get emotional about many things, but you do get emotional when you talk about Cam.
Yeah.
But I think that's such a vulnerable thing to say as well, because, people judge decisions that we make, and you were making decisions that made sense to you. And it did take time away from your young child. It is what it is. You can blame, shame, do all the things.
Truth.
But at the end of the day, we all make decisions and we don't know if it's the right one. And you're just going off gut. You're going off your intuition that like, this is what I need to be doing. You were following that. And, now you know the purpose and the reason, and it was worth it. You wouldn't change any of that now. You had to go back. And so there's just that vulnerability in acknowledging, especially selfishness. Like nobody wants to be like, yeah, maybe I was a little bit selfish at that time. That's not even the right word. You were taking care of yourself, following a new diagnosis in the midst of trying to fulfill your goals and dreams. And, there's no shame in that. Like we've got to stop shaming people for whatever, unless they're outright hurting someone. Like let people live. Let people make decisions. Let people learn from their decisions, good or bad, and then move it along.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
It is. And you just don't know for who else your decisions might be for.
Absolutely.
I mean, he played 36 holes in a golf tournament yesterday and has another 18 today. If I was a different person during those years, he would now be a different person now than who he is.
100%.
So 100%. Did he have any problems with his blood sugar? No, he was fine. Because he just saw, because he's learned how to take care of him. He's learned all of it. But again, he knows that he can. So
you set that example for him.
But it was all the nudges.
All the nudges. That's right. And winks. So, all right, we're going to wrap up this episode 55. No surprise there. Double fives. Another wink at all of you. Let that be a wink to you. If 5 is also your number, I hope this little message was a wink for you.
Yes.
Until next week, LYLAS gals and pals.
We's out.